everything we represent and stand for is also applicable to content creator on YouTube, on Twitch, on Instagram, even on Fortnite and Roblox. We're all struggling with the same challenges of like discoverability, engaging our audience, monetizing, having access to financing, and then seeing our activity being recognized in the broader physical world as some legitimate activity from which we can make a living.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast, where we ask your favorite builders the questions you wish you could ask yourself. This is a production of neonewstoday.com, and I'm your host, Dylan Grabowski. In this episode, we're joined by Sebastien Borget, the co-founder of Sandbox, a 3D metaverse game that launched in 2012, and a global ambassador for the SANDchain L2. In this conversation, we discussed how CryptoKitties changed Sandbox's trajectory from Web 2 to Web 3, how products in every vertical need to adapt to market needs, building through the ups and downs, why the team is launching the SANDchain L2, how to build effective partnerships, and so much more. Just a reminder, nothing said on this podcast is a solicitation to buy or sell any tokens, and that the guest or host might hold tokens discussed in any given episode. You can check out a full disclaimer at neonewstoday.com. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it on your favorite podcasting platform, and don't be afraid to share with friends and family. Every rating, review, like, and comment really helps us reach more people and bring you even more of your favorite guests. With all that said, I really enjoyed this conversation with Sebastien, and I hope you enjoy the conversation too. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast. Today I'm psyched to be joined by Sebastien Borget, the co-founder of the Sandbox and now SANDchain ambassador. How you doing today, Seb?
Amazing. Thank you. Very excited to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I think anybody who's been in the space for quite a while will remember the kind of like epic run that Sandbox had, and just kind of how it was like a prolific project during the NFT metaverse days. But before we kind of like dig into what was and what's next, as I was kind of like digging into your background, I was looking in on your website, and I noticed that you had listed all of these languages that you've been studying: English, German, Spanish, Chinese. So why do you think it's super important for people to be able to speak more than one language?
Well, that's a great starter. And I think like it really, like, culture is global, but like you don't want to have like a globalized culture in a way. So like the best way to understand a lot of the nuance is to start opening yourself, and you open yourself by starting with a language, like starting to understand the expression, the etymology, and being able to even if now probably with AI and the new AirPods you can translate on the fly, and like it might become effortless to learn a language. I think there is a lot of like richness in the language and subtleties and accents. It's quite, even within the same nation or country, you have so many different like accents of the same language and expression that could vary from the north to the south. It's quite fun, and that's also like, I think it's a great icebreaker. Anywhere you go, as soon as you start saying the first basic word, like just show you care for like the local culture, people become more receptive, just more friendly out of it. And I find it cool. And I think it's just like it's worth expanding your knowledge, learning new things all the time.
I love it. What's your favorite language you're learning right now?
Hey, as I spend more time in Korea recently, I started to learn a few more funny words in Korean.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, I myself am embarking on the path of learning a new language. I've been studying Spanish pretty hardcore for um, a, a good part of the second half of this year. So it's a really enriching and also humbling experience. So Before we kind of like dig into crypto, gaming, Web3, and all that, you have a pretty interesting background, a general background in startups. So, how did you end up working in startups? And then, how did that lead into your pre Web3 gaming era?
Right. Uh, well, as far as I remember, I've always been a geek. Like I always like to adopt new technology, buy new things on the first day to understand how they work. And part of myself, it's not just about like discovering the new technology. It's always like understanding, but how does it work and how do we make it more accessible, palatable to more people, attractive to more people. So as soon as I got my first video game console, I wanted to make my own games one day. As soon as I get my first computer, the first thing I wanted to do is like to disassemble software program to understand like the logic behind it and think through, to make allow them the program to do more things than they were usually intended to do. Um, and so like that led me to go into like an engineering school in France in network and telecommunication. As soon as like I had the first cell phones, I wanted to understand, but how does cell phone work? How can you communicate without a line and from anywhere in the world? And I learned about GSM protocol in the early the GPRS, Edge, and all the pre-3G, 4G, 5G, and 6G now, high-speed connections. Um, and along that journey, I actually did an exchange program in Hong Kong at the Chinese University in Hong Kong in my last semester, out of which, like, not only I discovered the local culture, I travel around Asia, and my co-founder, Arthur Madrid, approached me back in the day, and we started working together remotely, which was quite unusual, I would say, back in 2007, 2008, to start like taking a stranger call over Skype or some VoIP call with a card you scratch and say, hey, I'm a French entrepreneur building a startup in new technology, peer-to-peer, using BitTorrent, and I'm interested in what you've been doing because I've been an open source developer in that field of technology. And would you like to work together on a project? I say, yeah, sure, let's do that. And that was kind of like the beginning of a great journey that still goes on today. As soon as I finished that exchange program, I came back to Paris. He hired me, did an internship, graduated, got my diploma, and like that was my first job in the as COO of like that first startup. And afterward, like we had the first exit. That company sold out to a CDN network in Europe. We co-founded another one that this time was one of the first Web2 startups enabling users to upload photo, video, and music online in the cloud and stream it from anywhere on any device. Before it was called like cloud streaming, before Netflix, before Spotify. We saw that business again, and then in 2011, we stepped in mobile gaming, and we co-founded one of the first mobile free-to-play game studio. Now, like leading to one of my childhood dream, like, yeah, I want to make video games and I want to have the ability to make video game like the startup guy in a garage, so like Bill Gates when it started, or IBM stories you probably heard of. And that was the right time. And what I figured out is like there's always a right time to get starting as an entrepreneur in the field of new technology. Of course, you're going to take most of the risk, and the market might not be ready, but it's also when the barrier to entry is usually the lowest to new entrants, and you can learn the ropes and potentially establish yourself as a long-term actor. And so 2011, we co-founded this mobile game studio. We built games with characters and IPs using strong franchise like Garfield, Snoopy, Adam's Family. And the first Sandbox game, back then a 2D game on mobile where people could just by the touch of their finger, which was really new with the iPhone and an Android phone back then, was not just playing with with a stylus on a reactive screen, which was super slow, but like with a finger, things react super fast, super smooth, and you feel like you could create with a finger on the iPhone screen. And that was this feeling, this magic of like, I can make a game and anyone else can make a game by the touch of their finger, that drove the initial success of Sandbox. We had over 40 million downloads, 70 million player made creation by that time. We kind of were seen as like the 2D Minecraft, had a lot of cool updates. People were making not just art, but games, music, electronics, STEM. And it also led me to think through, like, great, we have one of the most successful user-generated content game. We've been in this field of user-generated content for quite some time now, but I can also see that our top creators are actually they are not staying after a few months, after a few years, like they were like leaving the game. And we that at that moment we realized that in a way, um, creators enjoy the passion of creating. It's a good hobby for them, but if they were not able to make a revenue from it, like they would move on to the next thing. And no matter how hard we tried, and we tried, but the technology failed us at that time, like literally to be able to share some portion of revenue with people who contributed in the content. I had to find their name in the game, match it with potentially a social profile on Twitter if they had one, to find if there's a way to DM them, to get to an email, to then send them by email a contract that I was writing, so that I could send a PayPal payment. To imagine the number of steps and all the effort and hassle to be able to support the creators who contribute to the game, and you only touch like a tiny slice of them. So frustration came out of it, like, and I didn't find a solution basically to share revenue with our top creators on mobile until, until I step in on virtual cats. Like the joke is like CryptoKitties was one of the first blockchain-based game. For those of you who haven't been long enough in crypto, that was by itself not a fantastic game. Like we've already see like so many like uh, games where you take care of an animal, you breed them, and they evolve as you feed them and play with them. But there were three innovation underneath that we found when we benchmark and deconstructed the game. The first one was the cat were actually not bought from the developer itself, but from other players. The second was that actually it was not bought on the game itself in a closed environment, but you had to go to this eBay of cats called OpenSea back then. So like a marketplace external. And it was not bought with a credit card in US dollar or euro, but it was actually paid with ETH, a cryptocurrency. And at that moment, I realized, but that's fantastic. Like instead of having virtual cat or like virtual, I don't know, dogs or dinosaurs or fishes or whatever, like we should just allow people to make their own NFTs, and then they can sell it themselves on the marketplace, and they can get paid themselves without me in the middle. Like I don't even need to write a contract or figure what's their PayPal or whatever. And so the technology at that time, in 2017, would actually come as a real solution to the problem we encountered. And that's at that moment that we say, look, that's an opportunity. We should be, again, first mover. Let's rebuild Sandbox. Let's make it 3D, multi-platform, have a marketplace, and use NFTs and tokens at the core to enable our creators to monetize. And so that's not the end of the journey. Then move forward 7 years later, we've grown Sandbox as one of the largest decentralized virtual world. People know us for metaverse, but ultimately we've also like brought in over 8 million users into Web3. We partner with more than 400 major brands, from the like of like Gucci, Snoop Dogg, Jurassic World, Attack on Titan, Ubisoft, Warner Music, and many other cool entertainment brands. Not only Western one, like a lot of Japanese, Korean brands as well. So like the multicultural aspect played an important role in that success. And we're also known for like being a leader in virtual real estate and for Sand, the main token of the platform, which is a top 100 cryptocurrency today still.
I also think that land has a lot of name brand power in the blockchain space, particularly for people who were here in 2020, 2021. And you just brought up a lot of really great things that I want to unpack. CryptoKitties is also the reason why I started exploring alt L1s in 2017 and 2018, which ultimately led to me working as a content creator because of these alt L1s. So I'm curious, before we kind of like dig in further, was the first time you kind of heard about blockchain or crypto, was your first exposure this moment when you realized that there was a problem and you couldn't reward your content creators? And now holy shit, crypto can provide that solution? Or did you kind of have an earlier exposure and an earlier aha moment to blockchain and crypto?
So I had an earlier exposure. Like I started to find out about Bitcoin in 2016, early 17, and like I was again like a geek and an engineer. I say, wow, what is this new thing? I don't understand it. Let me print and read the whole white paper to make sure. And then like, but how is it mined? Like I don't understand still. Like okay, I need to buy a miner and run a miner at home, and like what's this thing? A pool and end pool, and then I literally put my hands into it until I fully understand the proof of work and so on. And then at some point, I got excited. I say, "Oh wow, okay, I want to do my own mining facility." So I built a whole business plan, calculated the cost of electricity into so many places around the world. Because I say, and then I realized I say, that's interesting, but that doesn't seem such a fun business because basically it's just like hosting and power and running racks. And if you've been into the co-location business, data centers business, etc. You know, because that was needed for storage, for video, and for we were hosting terabytes of content before on the previous startup that we did, and I was in the CDN network, so I had already had all that experience with data center and self-hosting, and before cloud hosting and AWS really blew up on that side too, and I felt like, well, maybe it can be something interesting, but that's not something that would. I don't see what's the day to day like after a while. You set it up, it runs, requires some maintenance. There's important choice to do, and of course, like negotiating your supply of energy and so on. But I'm a builder at heart. I do product for helping creators. I've done games that touch millions of players. So I felt like, and then CryptoKitty came, and I said, now there's a game that uses that technology. Interesting. And that's where, like, what we do in the gaming industry, usually when there's a game and there's a popular, successful game, we deconstruct it. So we look at, okay, what are all the steps of the user journey, the first time user experience, the moment of the payment, paywalls, and so on, to understand why they are successful and people like playing and replaying those games. And that's where like the deconstruction of CryptoKitties allows. And also CryptoKitties, interesting, is one of the reasons why we joined forces and became part of Animoca brand. They acquired our mobile game studio in 2019. Back in the day, Animoca Brands was just there were bigger companies than us, obviously, but they were a mobile game publisher. They were taking like successful um, game from the West, US, and so on, to localize and publish them on Asian market like China, Korea, Hong Kong, Japan. Basically, not just translating, but localizing, bringing local IPs and characters to make them attractive and based on like the preference of local players. And so we were discussing a few years back around like bringing Sandbox to Asia, basically make it a successful Chinese version and so on. And then when we talked again and they say, we're now the publisher of CryptoKitties in China, and say, that's an interesting coincidence because like we're literally moving into NFTs thanks to CryptoKitties. And back in July 2018, like Hong Kong hosted a first conference called Nifty. That was one of the first time, like, I guess, very first blockchain crypto conference related to featuring gaming, and many of like companies like OpenSeas, like Infinity, and so on. We made early on at that time, and yeah, and we felt like, look, like they can bring us to distribution in Asia. They can help us to understand those markets, and we're literally aligned now into like NFT, the future for games. So let's join forces together, and that's how like we move along. Became acquired by Animoca brands, and afterward, like we saw like, well, the potential is to really scale up Sandbox into its own success. So we spin it out, raise our own raise funds from external investors, and and grew it as we can see today.
Yeah. I'm really curious, was Cyberpark a thing when you were studying in Hong Kong?
in 2007, I don't recall. I did my exchange program in 2007. Cyberport, I don't recall going there. And basically, CUHK is more in new territory, so I was more around Shatin, Mongkok, and then going down. Let's say I had a great young student life, like every Friday night into Lan Kwai Fong and Central and all of that. But I was not focused on business by that time.
Right.
So
LKF was more fun.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because I was in Cyberport in 2023, and Animoca had a pretty strong foothold there. And it seems like that is the where students get funneled into this kind of corporate park where there's a lot of Web3 and other types of businesses and entities that are located. And that was kind of the first time I got exposure to Animoca brands. So maybe before we jump into how the relationship with Animoca has changed, I'm really curious to hear about the evolution of Sandbox. So you said it started as this 2D game, and now it's more than 12 years old. 2018, you see how NFTs and how ERC20 tokens, fungible tokens, can be used to empower creators and users of the game. What was the thought process like in 2018? Thinking, okay, we're going to go full 3D. We're going to make this an immersive world that people can be a part of. Was that a difficult kind of conversation to have, or were you already at an inflection point where you and your team were thinking we need to upgrade the game and really bring it in to the 2020s?
So we were more at that inflection points because like what we realized is like um, a lot of like people who started like playing video games, like they started in the 90s, in the 2000s, and there was like no more nostalgia for 2D pixel art game. There are people who are grown up with 3D console right from the start, so like there's no appeal to 2D game for them. And so like the market for like retro style 8-bit, 16-bit pixel arts game is like a shrinking niche market. Whereas like well, people are just now accustomed to 3D casual games. We had a lot of what we saw as well is like uh, when we started Sandbox originally, like Minecraft was not on mobile, but then after, of course, Minecraft started to come to mobile. So like we kind of lost a little bit like the benefit of like being this 2D Minecraft on mobile, and we were also missing one very important element. Um, like the multiplayer aspect. Like we never succeeded to put Sandbox in 2D as a multiplayer game, and so we felt like well, it makes sense. A multiplayer game, like the viral factor is way greater because if you like a game, you're more likely to invite your friends to play with you. So the cost of user acquisition decrease if you, for every single user who enjoyed the game, he invites 3 other friends to play with him. So although the economics made more sense. And so we felt like it was the right time to start a new version of the game and to do it with at the core the integration of blockchain, NFTs, and token allows us as well to incorporate the economic part where like we didn't have like an inflated economy full of like virtual currencies and uncapped supply of like game items that we don't even have a proper tracking of like how many we sold and how many are in circulation among all the devices and trackers um, and users, sorry. And building it from scratch, building not just a game, but a platform that comprises a 3D editor, a no-code game maker, a marketplace, a map, and the game client was interesting. And um, we've done so. We built it. We launched around 2000, the end of 2018, the first version of our voxel editor. The end of 2018, the first version of Game Maker. 2019, our first land sale. 2020, the Sand token. And then from there on, like we had a lot of updates from the Game Maker tool to increase possibilities, to enable more multiplayer gameplay, people to make their own rules, better graphic, better loading time, and so on. And like the version that maybe most people played of Sandbox in the 2021-22, specifically if they entered with a boom of NFTs and metaverse, it's so different with what Sandbox is today, in terms of fun, in terms of like all the possibilities that the metaverse give you in terms of social interaction and so on. And so sometimes I wish like obviously it's 4 years later, like of course, but how do we get them interested again to come and check it out and so on? So right now we have this alpha season 6. We've been obviously it's like almost 6 years. Once a year we run a season. We feature a lot of brands, cool brands all together for several weeks, and people can explore and progress through a battle pass to earn different rewards. In this season, we have Cirque du Soleil, Smurf, Terminator, Peaky Blinders, Jurassic World, Casio G-Shock, Black Mirror, Chupa Chups. A lot of cool brand to play and interact into their universe, earn exclusive NFT reward, and even build your own games with. Cool abilities for avatars, multiplayer, player versus player, team versus team, gameplays, persistency of your progression. So a lot of things that the community also and the creators ask us to add over time.
I have a quick question. So, you've kind of used Minecraft as like the competitor to what Sandbox is, and for maybe like a millennial boomer like myself who's never played Minecraft, maybe somebody doesn't understand what like this world is like and the world creation process and just being able to explore a 3D world and build as you go. So, can you just like really high level Eli 5 like the gameplay style of the Sandbox and what this kind of like build and go 3D world is? What are the ways in which people can play within it?
Yeah, so one of the greatest revolution of Minecraft was like you build your own world into which you evolve. So you go, you collect resource, you craft them based on recipes, and so people could even host their own servers to make their own rules, and people started to spend nights, days, and weekends to start rebuilding the real world in Minecraft. A little bit like a box of Legos, and people start to make amazing things with them. So we had people who rebuilt the whole country of Denmark all together on one server. We had people that uh, like recreated like a giant library of Alexandria and great monument and landmarks of the world and so on in Minecraft, which by itself became like a performance, and it's a collaborative performance. You like to create, like you like to build, and then the gameplay wasn't so difficult. It was really essentially building and putting blocks together, but that required like the crafting time and resource, which is an effort. Um, and in Sandbox as well, like you could play with the physical elements, a lot of physics, or you can just build your own levels and world and play into them or share them into an online gallery for others to discover, explore, and rate. Uh, so very strong common element for this category of game called like sandbox games, which is like a generic category name where like basically the gameplay is made by the players themselves and the content is made by the players themselves. But Minecraft provided a level of freedom and an extreme minimalism in the core, the original gameplay of what it is, down to the essence of it, which is like, let's build the world and let's explore and play it together. And so like a lot of games started to copy Minecraft in the graphic style and the aesthetic, and they added their own like, hey, I'm a blocky block, because like the aspect of like Minecraft, a block-based first-person shooter, or I'm a block-based like I don't know, car racing game, and so on. And so that's why you start to see a lot of like copycats and clones and became successful, or all or not. So actually, some actually shut down, but the only that remains is still Minecraft today. They celebrated, I think, its 15th anniversary last year. Um, and it was a game that like promoted as well a lot of like positive value in education around and was adopted early on by kids. Kids enjoyed it as their like digital playground to build together with their friends. Schools use Minecraft to teach mathematics and science and physics and a lot of other great matters from the curriculum. Um, and it became a tool of expression as well. And so it really shaped a generation which are now used to like more to basically customize more their experience within games. And for me, that kind of led to like where I see the future of gaming going, which is like 100% user-generated content. I don't see a game where like players cannot change the rules, cannot change the character, cannot change the world, cannot customize the items, cannot sell themselves their creation in the marketplace, where there's not an economy that can revolve around like the contribution from the players as creators. Um, and, and um, and well, now, like, I guess if you're not familiar with Minecraft as generation, I guess Roblox is kind of like what kind of took a little bit over Minecraft. It has more of like the social network aspect as well, but people can also learn coding and make their own games on Roblox. Um, I think they just surpassed the 100 million plus active daily users, which like a fantastic, took them over 15 years as well to reach that. So like definitely a long uh, grind, I would say, until like they surpassed Minecraft in number of players and became the market leader now.
Mhm. Yeah, my favorite block-based game, which recently lost its developers, was Crunker Strike. It was a first-player shooter that was clearly built off of the open source ethos of block-based landscapes and 3D worlds. So thank you for kind of like delving into that history and background of how Minecraft and Roblox kind of made a foundation for Sandbox to kind of launch in Web3. Before you explained these basics, you also brought up a timeline, and you mentioned that you launched the land token in 2018. You launched the first version of the game in 2018 as well. And this was an era for people who weren't around back then. That was a very deep and dark bear market, and so you've had the experience of building in the darkest of times, seeing this crazy amount of support and use just 3 years later, and now you're in a place where you're asking the class of 2021, "Hey, come back and test the game. This is completely different than what you remember." So, I guess maybe what are some of the lessons that you've learned or that you've gleaned from launching a product in 2018 when the appetite for probably buying a new NFT might not have been there, to going to a place where like this was a $6.8 billion market cap project that was part of like the blue chips of gaming. And I remember everybody talking about having gaming tokens in their portfolios. And now being in a place where you're like, hey, we have all these great brands and we have a different type of game, but our user base isn't the same as it was in 2018 or 2021. What are just like some of the lessons that you've gleaned over the years? Because I think a lot of people are going to be in your position in 2, 3, 5, 6 years, where they're going to have gone through these crazy waves of support and users, and then grinding through bear markets.
Right. Well, one of the first lesson is like basically even if we are building like a user generated content creation tool or game, like we were not like we didn't launch it without content. And we didn't launch it in a way like, hey, okay, this is a great tool for you to start creating. You know what? Let's start create. Like basically we had those soft launch period where we understood like who's going to be our original like core audience. In the case of like the mobile game, when we did the soft launch in 2012, we worked with over 100 pixel artists, which are like people whose job is to make 2D pixel art for various purpose like graphic, magazines, and so on. And we contact them and say, look, we're making one of the first pixel art game. Like we want you to use it to, and we'll pay you $10 or $20 for every drawing you'll do and you'll share. And we did that until we had 1,000 content available on the marketplace made by the most talented pixel artists in the world who were excited to test a new tool, get paid for it, and like for us collect a lot of feedback to improve the product, as well as when we launch, have something fantastic to showcase for inspiring others. And we applied the same recipe in 2018 2018, we had this 3D editor, VoxEdit. There was already a market leader tool called Magica Voxel that a lot of people were using to do voxel art. They were sharing every day over social media with a hashtag called Voxel Dailies, their creation. So they like to really showcase and network and be part of the community because of that. And we approached them and said, look, we're making a tool that allows you to do voxel art, but also to animate it. And that's the exciting feature that's different from Magica Voxel. We'll love you to try. We'll pay you $30, $40 back then per model. Like it takes you 1 hour, 2 hours maybe to do. You could do X hundreds for us. We'll showcase it, obviously. And we love your feedback. And, by the way, we pay you and you keep all the ownership of your creation and you have the right to sell it on the marketplace when we launch it. And so that was a great strategy. And like a lot of voxel artists, one thing that's terrible in the game industry is like the most creative people, the artists, are actually the most underpaid people of like the whole industry. So that's why like most of the time, like creative artists, they're always like trying to do multiple jobs, multiple gigs, looking for side revenue that they could earn from their skills. And so they had a great appetite for that. And that's how like many of the first content creator on Sandbox came in early. They made voxel and then they love the idea of making their own games without having to talk to a developer and so on, using their content. And that allows us to showcase the tool in action with a lot of great content already. And then to accelerate that, we also introduced a first creator fund. Back then, I think once we had raised fund, we was $1 million to attract even more people to use our game maker tool and at VoxEdit and keep showing. And there's something that's very that's true. Like basically, you when you arrive to a tool or marketplace and you see great content, it keeps inspiring and there's more of mouth. So there is kind of like snowball effect of like if you showcase one category of things with your creation tool, it will attract more and more of that category. And so the fact that we picked ourselves initially like creators as a core audience helped us to attract more creators. And because creators saw like, oh, I heard from other creators that they are getting paid, that is cool software, and like I can sell my content on a marketplace, it was really a positive feedback loop and create to and position us among the first. And then when we introduce the concept of lands, people also like voxel artists, they have familiarity with Minecraft. Many of them were actually doing things in Minecraft because of, again, like they're all playing with blocks, right? So they enjoy the idea of I can make my own game now and I need a land, that they start to get interested into lands. So when we did the first land sale, they sold out entirely in a few minutes or half an hour back in the day. That was exciting. And we didn't even have our token. It was not listed, but it proved that we have users for our tools. We had users and demand for the NFT we're selling because the right value proposition and match. And it proved that then we could go and talk to the exchanges. And instead of being in a situation where like, well, exchanges are big and they have all the leverage, say, look, we have a fantastic and engaged community who's already spending, who spent literally $100 to $1,000 and time participating, and they are ready to join for the first time a crypto exchange if you list us. And that actually inverted the balance and make it more interesting and allow us to list on the Binance Launchpad in August 2020, and then afterwards in 2 more exchanges. And so I think it's not about chasing the big number, the big community over Twitter, over Telegram. I don't think we've been that great at like always like the community and the hype, but we've been better at delivering like real experience, real product, and focusing on like the core audience that enjoy by playing around with what we've launched.
Very cool. At the risk of maybe opening a can of worms, do you have any insights into the retention of users that bought those first land NFTs, and how many of them are still here today? Is it like 5%? Is it 30%? How many like hardcore Sandbox users have you been able to keep playing on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis since you guys rebranded into the Web3 realm?
Oh wow, so that one has been a pretty challenging, I would say. Like as soon as we moved from mobile to PC, first of all, for even not taking into account the Web3 part, we knew that well, we are already addressing potentially different audience. So the fact that we moved from a 2D mobile game to a 3D PC based and then PC and Mac based version, that was a gap. The second thing is like now, so it was difficult to convert, even though we had 40 million installs. Like we never promised we will bring 40 million users to the PC version, but we knew that that was unrealistic. The second thing is many of the landowners we found they are the most engaged participant into our ecosystem. They are creating, they are playing, and we're still seeing that today. Like we have launched the Alpha Season 6, and among the players of the Alpha Season 6, I've seen like a good percentage of them are actually like landowners. So that made me very happy. And I understand like why, like they are looking for inspiration for their own land. They also potentially want to earn some of the rewards to use, and because they have also like they built something on their own land, it creates an additional attachment to the platform. Like the personal commitment you put into it is even higher. People who never played or never built, but maybe they got the token, we also have that audience, obviously, and we had more of that audience when like there was more hype in the market, people who were buying NFT more for the speculative aspect than necessarily for the interest in those games. Uh, but those tend to come and go over time, or if they're still holders, like they are not active users, right? Um,
I'm curious, I work in an ecosystem I work in the Neo ecosystem, and that was like the darling coin of 2017 and 18. And now today, for a lot of long-term ecosystem participants, because the price is down, and when token price is down, everybody's at fault. There's a lot of negativity and a lot of negative sentiment. Do you find that you are running into this issue as well with long-term participants? Or because a lot of your landholders are also creators, that maybe they don't necessarily pay too much attention to the price, they're still enjoying the process of building and creating and participating. I guess, do you have a lot of, like, negative sentiment that you run into on a day-to-day basis, or does the positivity of creation and creativity outweigh that?
Well, it's I wish it was as magical as that. But yes, we do have very very good, genuinely passion, creative people, SandFam members. Some of them came again when we announced SANDchain October 1st in Singapore. So I've been really happy to meet and see people who've been with us for 4 or 5 years, sometimes more. Um, but I also understand like the price and the price sentiment create a negative sentiment. It's hard to fight against certain wave and misconception. So when the narrative started to be around like metaverse is dead and like there's no players in those virtual worlds, or like the price of the token itself moved from $7 to $1 and then at 0.3, 0.2 today. I wouldn't call it depressing, but I would call like it's difficult, and that affect everybody's motivation, the motivation of your team members who probably were when you use a token as well as an incentive to reward for participation in the network or the project. But you certain just like creators, like the financial aspect is an essential part of your motivation. You cannot just remove it from it. So I understand that it's difficult. I understand that some people figure out that like they could have better things to do of their time, or it was not just worth the economical equation wasn't worth like going on in that ecosystem anymore. Um, where it's more difficult is like when a lot of the project from the 2020, 21, so are no longer here. They are no longer building. You don't meet the founders still there. You don't feel like there's and it is challenging. It is difficult. The market will go up and down. Like it's always easier to surf the top of the wave and see we are the best of the world when like everything is easy. It's much harder to say we're still here and building when everything is hard. But I do think like commitment pays off. And I hear a lot of people that say, but why are you still here and building? You could have retired 10 times if you wanted. And say, no, I don't think I achieved the mission. Like we still have a lot to build. Like my goal is like not just, I want millions of people to be creator and to make a living from being content creator on Sandbox and outside. And so I feel like we have a lot more solution to offer, and that it's every major disruption. And I was mentioning even before, it took 15 years to Roblox to become the leader. They will not be done in 2 or 3 years. They will be done in more likely 10 years, sometimes more. There's never like overnight success, even if sometimes the narrative would like to make you think so, like it's easy and it can be overnight and so on. But no, like so far, no success came overnight. Um, it's always been like it's an overnight success with 10 years in the making and some iteration and some failures and steps in the middle. And I believe like we have a unique opportunity with Sandbox that even if I started something from scratch, like would take me again 10 years to rebuild such a strong brand, a strong potential project, a token that's a top 100 listed globally, recognized, known. Um, and such a fantastic community. And so I prefer definitely to keep building and adding value. So that's why, like, I'm sure we'll talk about SANDchain. Like, um, the next phase for Sandbox is to start empowering creators in different ways and just like making them build virtual world experiences. Because I think like all the experience we accumulated and everything we represent and stand for is also applicable to content creator on YouTube, on Twitch, on Instagram, even on Fortnite and Roblox. We're all struggling with the same challenges of like discoverability, engaging our audience, monetizing, having access to financing, and then seeing our activity being recognized in the broader physical world as some legitimate activity from which we can make a living.
Mhm. I think a lot of people who've been building in Web3 for as long as you have experienced the kind of pitfalls and the negativity that comes with the waves of sentiment. So I know for a fact that many, many other people are in your shoes and share similar positions. But I 100% agree that taking the long-term vision and continuing to build day in and day out, regardless of if you're at the top of the wave or at the bottom, is clearly the way forward. And so I'm excited to talk about what the Sandbox ecosystem's next step is with SANDchain. And really, what's super exciting and interesting is that SANDchain is an L2, and the Sandbox felt that in order to be able to to feed this creator economy, that SANDchain was the way to do it. And I love this quote that you had in Decrypt, which said, "The real value no longer lies in the base infrastructure, which is increasingly commoditized, but in how we differentiate whom we serve and how we enable meaningful use cases." So now I'd like to talk a little bit about SANDchain. Why is now the time to move off of Ethereum and to not leverage Ethereum as kind of like the pushing force for Sandbox? What was like the moment that you and your team said, "Now's the time we build SANDchain"?
Well, you just like you said, like I think like Ethereum is a fantastic general purpose layer one chain. It's here to stay and like become like really the layer for all the side chains. But like the network you're building on needs to support your growth. And we say like in Web3, like network effects are very important. Like that's how like you bootstrap community and you build. But the realization we had is like, well, we work very hard to bring new users to Web3. Those users, they entered Polygon and Ethereum as a chain, but what did really Polygon or Ethereum did for us? Like when did they go out there and promote actively Sandbox among all the other projects? And for them, it didn't really matter if we were like the number one revenue source sometimes on some days for like having the most popular NFT collection of land or avatar being minted on their chains, because they look at, under a different perspective. And so that really led us to think like, well, like first the user experience is not great because they have to buy a second token and we have to explain them what is this chain that they need to buy a token for. Then like the chain itself could be slow, and even Polygon at some time was really under heavy load, and like that affected our own performance. And ultimately, like even though they didn't do nothing, obviously, like the efforts were overall limited into like how they could support our activity specifically. And sometimes the chain doesn't have like gamers per se or creators. So like even if they bring users, they will not necessarily bring the right kind of users. So we went there and back to the drawing board, and like we thought, okay, like how to best support our ecosystem? Well, we need to have our own sidechain and a sidechain that supports our own token. And the fact that if we bring users, um, well, those users can flow within that ecosystem. And so the first thing we looked from a sidechain perspective was like that Sand token will become the gas token for the chain. And that already restricted the perimeter of like which sidechain we could work on. And then we look at which sidechain was actually already live in production, battle tested, because we cannot wait for it to go to testnet, maybe eventually, and be delayed one more year. And so that's something I wanted to. But after a few months of looking into, like zkSync really came out as like the main partner of choice to build the SANDchain with a high transaction speed, the support for our own token as a gas fee, and many other benefits, such as like having a roll-up as a service providers, which in this case Caldera, which allows us to actually abstract the complexity of building the infrastructure so we can focus more on like, let's leverage our ecosystem and build something and bring the content and the audience instead. So that's what we did. We had a lot of interest, obviously, since we launched the SANDchain. I think today we have more than 100,000 signature already of our manifesto. The testnet went live last week. We have some quests ongoing where people can start earning their own sand points. And I'm really excited to try to build a solution that focuses on the content creator. When we looked at the space of sidechain, we didn't see a lot that focus in that vertical. We see a lot of gaming chain, obviously, and I felt like we're not a gaming chain. We've been really, if you look at the whole history of Sandbox, it's all been and always been about the creators. If they could create a 3D world game for the first time, that's fantastic. That's a great onboarding for many people like me in my teenage days. I always wanted to make my own game, but we shouldn't also like restrict them into like, hey, the only way for you to be a content creator is to make a 3D virtual world based game, or to be on for a brand to be on Sandbox is to open an experience on the map. There is many ways at Sandbox with our strong brand, our partnership, and our tokens and community, we could help you. And before our approach actually also restrained us to many ways we could partner with brand, whereas within what the value proposition for SANDchain is, like loyalty as value, every interaction being on chain, having loyalty points on chain that can be swapped for Sand point or creator points, and eventually for Sand, or launching your own creator token. I do think that it's enabling a whole new layer for content creator to monetize, to engage, to grow their audience. And that's where I'm excited about, because it comes not as a replacement, it comes as an expansion of what people were able to do before in Sandbox, but it's not restricted only to Sandbox. It's appealing to a much larger audience.
Yeah, and congratulations on testnet. The latest stat that I looked at was more than 25K addresses that participated and more than 138K transactions in less than a month. That's fantastic. There's clearly a market hunger there. As we kind of like zoom out and start to wrap up, I think one of the super impressive feats, other than just surviving in blockchain for 8+ years, are the caliber and the magnitude of the partnerships that Sandbox has been able to establish. So, can you just share some nuggets of gold for how Web3 builders, projects can go out there and really make the most of themselves and establish these relationships? What are some key ways in which you can build effective partnerships?
Well, like at the core, you have to think like always when we try to approach a partnership, and I saw a lot of those MOUs and like let's just announce something without a real ground behind, and I kind of like force myself in Sandbox as well. Like, let's not do that. Like, because basically, like, what are we announcing exactly? What is the product? Keep in mind, I'm an engineer by background. I'm a product guy. I build products. I want to know like exactly what's out of like what's just been announced. So the way we approach partnership is we try to understand first like what can we bring ourselves as a solution to the partner, and then like, okay, and so what? Like that's the number one question after you should read something. You ask yourself, so what? Like, did I understood what they meant? Do I understand where to click and what can I do? And so if you fail that test to the simple answer, question is like, so what? Like then it's not meaningful and it shouldn't happen. But if you understand like what is a value add, like what people will feel and see as a journey, as a click into a link, go to a page or download an app and get into a product and get for benefit, then it should happen.
So as we grow beyond, as SANDchain launches and we grow beyond just simply looking at it as an L2 for gaming ecosystem, SANDchain really wants to support the creator economy. What are some of the broader initiatives that you and your team are going to be pushing? Who are the different types of builders and creators you want to see coming onto the chain and building within the ecosystem?
So ideally, we wish to be a place that gathers and aggregate a lot of like creator-focused solution, whether it's related to like launchpads, DEX, IP monetization, IP tokenization, royalties. We don't intend to rebuild all of those by ourselves and become a competitor with other. I prefer like if there's other solution out there on other chain, even on Base, on Solana, etc. Like why don't just add SandChain to your multi-chain strategy and like let's be the place where content creator, if we attract and we appeal to them. And going back to this idea, the more creators you have in one place, the more it appeals to more creators as well. Um, that we can offer and gather all those solutions. So some of the value proposition for SandChain is to build loyalty program with Quest and Action. We also wanted to enable like crypto payment for content creator as an advance over future recoupable that they would receive by a wire transfer from Google Ads, YouTube, and so on. And then we found out there's already solution out there, people who tried to build it. So instead of like competing with them, let's partner with them and let's help them to grow with SandChain. So maybe they can help more creators. And that's also one way I look at it is like, I always believe in Web3 that the market is still too small for us to compete. So we should have, on the opposite, like think like how we grow the market for all of us by supporting each other, speaking together, inviting other people who are trying to do kind of like the same thing or address the same problem to present it. And that mindset led me as well to become the president of the Blockchain Game Alliance and support blockchain gaming, uh, explaining the benefit of blockchain technology within the broader video game industry to support the whole blockchain gaming industry. That led me to have as a hobby like a digital art gallery in Paris and support artists and digital artists and be all the actors into that ecosystem. And here, like my approach is like, again, any solution that's focused on helping content creator, like we should join forces. We should see how we can bring more value and more creators from the start. And I'm not here to try to say, oh, well, you know what, we'll build everything ourselves and we'll be the leader for a content creator. It's always going to be a fragmented market. You were into the Neo ecosystem back in the day. Now, like, there's so many different blockchains out there. We're not trying to be a killer L1 of whatever. No, we're like a very simple and friendly sidechain L2 that wants to help. And I hope that with this mentality and like with the network that we have of brands, of investors, of partners, we'll be able to be attractive and efficient as a solution to solve that problem.
And for anyone who hasn't yet done so, I suggest taking a peek into the Blockchain Game Alliance, and also take a peek into Artverse. Gaming and art are two very great use cases for NFTs, and I think they're phenomenal verticals to delve into. So I guess, Seb, last question, wrapping up. Everybody on crypto Twitter's favorite question: when mainnet? I'm being a little cheeky. What are kind of like the next steps for SANDchain?
Yes, good question. So we just rolled out the testnet, the builder kit with our partner Sequence, which offering like a very seamless solution to onboard users with account abstraction and many other features. Just went live as well, so you can go to build.sandchain.com to get started there. Like, we're starting already to see a lot of first integration happening. Testnet, we're gearing toward Q1 2026. We'll open it as early as we can, as we hopefully see people like bring we have sufficient like volume of transaction for testing users, and like we feel like, okay, now let's push the big button. There's no way back. That's mainnet. And we'll have more, like we'll have probably Launchpads, introduce DEX, and a lot of other great products. So, and we'll launch various initiatives to attract those builders as well. Yep, that's an exciting roadmap for the next coming weeks and months.
Awesome. Well, best of luck on the forthcoming mainnet launch. And for anyone who's interested in building in SANDchain, you just heard the link to go to. I hope to run into you in Buenos Aires for Dev Connect. So I'll be keeping my ears to the ground for events that you're speaking at or that you're hosting. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join the Smart Economy podcast today.
Thank you, and well, see you on SANDchain.
Cheers. Thank you for tuning in to the Smart Economy podcast. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes and insights, head over to www.smarteconomypodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of our video content. If you enjoyed this discussion, please consider showing your support by liking, commenting, and reviewing this episode on your favorite podcasting platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and bring even better content your way. We'd also love to hear from you, so please drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube to share what topics you'd like us to cover or who you'd like to see as our next guest. And if you or someone you know might make for a great guest, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always on the hunt for fresh voices and new perspectives. And for our NEO token holders out there, please consider voting for NEO News Today as your council representative. We've proudly been serving the NEO ecosystem since 2017, and we'll continue to do so by putting portions of our council rewards directly back into ecosystem growth initiatives. With all of that said, we cannot wait to catch you next time.